Okay, good day. This is day 2 of the Schwartz Vacation offering of Daf Yomi, and hope that you are all doing well and look forward to being back in person, God willing, sometime next week. In the meantime, wanted to share with you the next daf. Today's daf is Nedarim Daf Samach Hey, and we are at the very top of Samach Hey Amud Aleph. So I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. Okay, so yesterday we began our discussion of openings to annul Nedarim, and we mentioned the debate in the opening Mishnah of the 9th parak regarding new developments. Rabbi Eliezer said that a new development can serve as a basis to annul a neder, while the Chachamim said no, it cannot. You know, we don't allow a new development to serve as a basis to annul neder. And as we explained, based on the Ran, that what's going on here is that the Chachamim say it's got to be a mistake. When we annul a neder, there's got to be a sense of a mistake based on what you could have known at that moment. And so that's the focus. Rabbi Eliezer also had the advantage of a pasuk. He had the advantage of a pasuk in connection with the Moshe Rabbeinu, where Hashem says that the people who had sought to kill you are dead. And so as a result, that shows that even a new development can be a response to, we can use that to nullify a neder. And as we said yesterday, Moshe had made a neder to remain in Midian when he married Zipporah, and that Hashem was saying that he didn't need to fulfill that neder anymore, because the basis of that neder was assuming that the people who were out to get him were going to stay around. But in fact, now they had been killed. And again, the Chachamim said, no, it was not in fact that they were killed, rather they became poor. And becoming poor is considered something that is reasonably foreseeable. And so as a result, that is the kind of mistake that we will allow it for annulment according to the Chachamim, whereas otherwise we would not. So all right, so now we're going to, now that we've talked about Moshe's annulment of that oath, we're going to note another aspect of that vow that Moshe made that will also affect our analysis of how one will nullify and annul a vow. So let's take a look. So Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Hamudar Hana Mechavero. If one says that he's not going to benefit from his friend, Eimatirin lo ella befanav, you can only release that person in front of the other person. Meaning, if I say that I'm not going to well, let's take a look at the Ran. So Tanya Amudar Namechavero Ein Matirin Lo Ela B'Fanav. Ika Manda Amar. So there are some who say the Davka Kishahanadar L'Tzora Chavero, that it's only when the neder was for the benefit of your friend. So Kineder Shenadar Moshe LeYisro, just like the neder that Moshe made for Yisro, meaning Yisro had wanted his daughter to be protected, and so as a result, he said, "Oh, Moshe, I want you to swear to me that you're going to stay in Midian." And Moshe swore because he thought that, of course, Moshe also was thinking at the time that I'm not going to be able to go back to Egypt because there are people who are out to kill me. So you lay Shevimo Lahanato, right? So that Moshe swore to Yisro to stay with him for his benefit. And we'll see also the oath that Tzidkiyahu made, that he made to Nebuchadnezzar, to Maisi B'samach, that we're going to bring shortly. Again, it was for Nebuchadnezzar's benefit. Because Nebuchadnezzar was concerned about being embarrassed, and so he made Tzidkiyahu swear, Aval neder shenadar shelo l'tzorach chaveru matirin lo shelo b'fanav. But if one were to make an oath that is not for the benefit of the other person, well, then that would not be require the other person's presence. Umistavra daha milsa talya b'may depligi b'Yerushalmi. And this question of the extent of whether or not the oath that we're talking about must be for the person's benefit depends on on another debate in Yerushalmi. The time the ein matirin lo ela b'fanav. What's the reason that we require the presence of the other person? Because there's one person who says, there's one opinion that says Hasam over there, the time of the milsa b'mnei habusha. It's because of the embarrassment that if I make an oath that I'm a kolomer, she is bayesh mechaverosha hanadar haya lahanato, that you will be embarrassed in front of the other person whose benefit you swore to provide. So if I say, is again in the case of Moshe had sworn to for the benefit of Yisro to not leave Midian, and now he needs to undo his vow. So obviously it needs to be done in front of Yisro so as to emphasize the seriousness and to some degree embarrass Moshe for having taken the oath in the first place. But Akshav Rotzav Shiatiro, and so now that he wants to be free of the oath, Yeshiatiro lo, the high time lo shayach elakisha hanadar haneder hayalahanato. That in that situation, it only makes sense to say that the neder was one that was for the other person's benefit. Halav hachi, but if it weren't that way, mashma de matirin oto afila shalom b'fanav, then you would be able to potentially benefit. You would be able to nullify the vow even when it wasn't in front of the other person. Mihu ikudiyav taima hasam mibnei hachashad. But there are also those who say that the reason that you need to be in front of the other person is not because you're trying to embarrass him, but rather because we're worried that the other person is going to suspect the person who's covered by the vow is going to be suspect of violating the vow. Kilomer shechavero hu mudar mimenu, right? Lo yada behatiro. That the person who said he's not allowed to be benefited from, he's going to not know that that the oath has been canceled. And now when the person who made the oath benefits from the other person, he's going to the person who gives the benefit is going to suspect the other guy, shehu over al nidro, that he's violating his neder. High time, and for this reason, afilu neder shehu shalola hanas chavero ematirin lo ela b'fanav chashada, because there is going to be a suspicion that the person is violating the neder, and so in order to make sure that everybody knows that there's no violation going on, we're going to say that you need to nullify the vow in front of the other person. The su ika bein hani trey, and there's another difference between these two approaches. Lishne, I'm sorry, excuse me. The two ikabain hani trey lishna, and there's another difference between these two approaches. Dilamanda amar that according to the view that says that we're worried about the concern that somebody might be a suspect, but we're worried that they're going to not realize that that the other person has nullified their vow, and therefore that they're going to be suspicious that the person is violating their vow. Kol shehodiu matirin lo, that as long as the person is informed, then it's going to be mutter. Afilu shelo b'fanav, even if it's not actually in front of the person. Desu leika chashada, because then there won't be any suspicion any longer. The key is that as long as those who are involved in the neder are informed about it, that's all you need. You don't actually, when it says that ein matirin lo ela b'fanav, it doesn't mean literally in front of the person. It just means that the person is informed. But according to the view that says that what we're concerned about is the embarrassment, well then afilu hodiyuhu davka b'fanav, that when it comes to knowing, it needs to be in front of him. The kosher lo b'fanav like kabusha, because when there's nothing to say in front of him, so then it's not going to be embarrassing. So therefore, that's why we need to do this. And now we'll continue on in the Ran, as the Ran here now is going to not only address this, but the point is, do we need the other person's permission? So we're saying now that you need to do it in the other person's presence. But what if the other person doesn't want to give their permission? Maybe they don't want to be in the presence. What then? V'hacha dahavi b'fanav ubal karko shel chavero pshita dematirin beneder she'enu lahanato shel chavero. Now, when it comes to a situation where it's not for the third party's benefit, well, then clearly you don't need their permission in order to be to have your vow nullified. Abal beneder shehu lahanato. But according to the approach where we're talking about a neder that was made for the benefit of the other person, vadayin matirin lo elamidaito. Became kasav Rabbeinu Tamzal, and in fact, the Baal Tosos of Rabbeinu Tam says that in fact that's that in fact you need the other person's permission if it is in order, if the vow is for the other person's benefit. Miu, however, now, what happens if, in fact, the rabbi or the Beit Din gives annuls the vow without the person's knowledge and without the person's presence and without the person's permission? Ishari nadro olo. So, do we say that the neder is going to be now permitted for the person or not? So tzricha iyuna, that was going to require analysis. The perek hasholeach mashma di'eved huter haneder. That when we talk about in Maseches Gittin, we are going to see that in fact there is a basis to say that even when you don't have permission, the neder will be annulled. To Amrin and Hasan, because we say over there, Gabi Hitkin Rabbeinu Gamliel. Noderet liyutomim, and with respect to swearing for the benefit of orphans, b'chulu loshna elashalo nases uparchinan b'lichush delma azla lagabi chacham, and we say, well, 1 second, maybe you need to worry that the person went to a chacham b'sharila, and maybe he permitted it. Well, if the oath that is being made there is for the benefit of the orphans, well, they can't not know if you need to go and tell the person ahead of time. If the person who's benefiting from the vow must be told and must give their permission. So it must be that we're talking about where it was done. Lo mahani, and if you say that even b'di'evid it doesn't help, ki az legabi chacham my havi. So who cares if he went to a chacham? Because the haneder almana lahanat yisomimhu. So ela shmamina da afilu lahanas chav beiro kol shehitiruhu b'di'evid mutter. But hakanami, and here too, we're going to see in the case in Gemara is going to bring the case of shortly of the Sanhedrin nullifying Tzidkiyahu's oath to Nebuchadnezzar, and in fact, it seems like the undoing of the oath was a valid undoing. So we're not going to go through the rest of the round, but we'll tee it up for the fact that we're going to talk about this other discussion in a moment. So how do we know the fact that you need this permission, you need the other person's presence in order to annul the vow? So minahani nili Amar Rav Nachman diksiv Vayomer Hashem el Moshe b'midyan lech shuv Mitzrayim ki mesu kol hanashim. The full verse or much of the verse that we said in connection with Hashem telling Moshe is the end of the verse is Hamivakshim es nafshecha. So the Hashem said to Moshe in Midyan. So either it's the specific noting the fact, of course we know where Moshe was. We know that Moshe was in Midyan. So, or alternatively, one can understand it as we'll see that b'Midyan Lech, that this combination of going to Midyan, of Midyan combined with Lech, is essentially suggesting that that you need to actually go to Midyan and go to Yisro in order to have your vow annulled. Indeed, if we take a look at the Mefarish top line, Mahu b'Midyan Lech, what does it mean with respect to Midyan Lech, right? So, Ella Hakika Amar Lech. This is what Hashem was telling Moshe. B'Midyan Nidarta, in Midian, you made this vow, Lifnei Yisro, in front of Yisro. Leich v'hater b'fnei Yisro. So go and nullify it in front of Yisro. She'ein matirin lo l'adam ela b'fanav, because you can only nullify a vow when you're in front of the person whose the vow is benefiting. The Yisro hadiro l'Moshe shelo lashuv Mitzrayim, because Moshe, because Yisro had made Moshe swear that he would not return to Egypt. And Moshe had in mind, namely, the people that were trying to kill him. For Amar, and now the language here is a little bit unclear because you have two different versions. For Amar Rebbe Talmud Chacham Mefer La'atzmo, and either Rebbe is saying that you can't, a Talmud Chacham is able to nullify his own vow, and so as a result, Moshe would go to Yisro, and with Yisro's permission, end up nullifying his own vow. Or this could also be said to say that in fact, Ain, if we take a look at the Hagos Habach, V'amar Rabban Gamliel, Talmud Chacham, Eino matir la'atzmo. That's is the alternative language. So in any event, the bottom line is that Moshe was going to Midian, was specifically going back to Yisro in order to nullify his vow. And so that's the source for how we know this. Okay, so now we've told that story. So now it's time to tell the story of Tzidkiyahu and Nebuchadnezzar, because that's also going to be relevant. So let's go through the rest of it. So Amrlo, so the Gemara explains now what God was telling Moshe. B'midyan nidarta leich v'hater. Actually, we quoted this language is also in the Mefarish. B'midyan nidarta leich v'hater nidricha b'midyan. Go and undo your vow in Midyan in front of Yisro. Diksiv by Yoel Moshe, because we had, and how do we know that Moshe had made a vow in the first place? Because it's the Torah had said, but Yoel Moshe. Right, this is in Shmot Bet Kaf Aleph, that Vayoel Moshe, that he dwelt with him. You know, that is a sense of making an oath. The Ein Allah, right? The word Allah, Aleph Lamed Hey, Ella B'Shvua, because an Allah is an oath. And how do we know that? Because now we're going to have a citation to Nebuchadnezzar Diksiv Vayaveo So Allah, that in Yechezkel, it says that Nebuchadnezzar made Tzidkiyahu do an Allah, and then in Divrei Hayamim it refers V'gam b'melech Nebuchadnezzar Marad, that when it comes to Chizkiyahu, he rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, Asher Hishbiu Be'elokim, who had him swear to God. So that's the story. So now that we've given the proof that by Yoel, means an oath, and so as a result, Moshe had made an oath to Yisro. So now we're going to get into the details of the story of Nebuchadnezzar and Tzidkiyahu. So my mirror say, what exactly was Tzidkiyahu's rebellion? So Ashkechet Tzidkiyah the Nebuchadnezzar dahava neka'achil arnava achaya, that Nebuchadnezzar happened upon to see Nebuchadnezzar. That Tzidkiyahu happened upon Nebuchadnezzar and happened to see him saying eating a hare, a rabbit, and the issue is this rabbit was a chaya. Now it can either mean, if we take a look at the Mefarish, she'ena muvushelis, either it was first of the narrow lines in the Rashi on the right hand side of the page, which is we're referring to as the Mefarish, she'ena muvushelis, because it was not cooked, so it was raw. The East Amri chaya mamish, and some people say that it means it was really alive. That in fact it was still alive while Nebuchadnezzar was eating it. And so this is an embarrassing thing that Nebuchadnezzar didn't want out there, that he was so wild, such a wild person, that he would eat a rabbit live or at least raw. So as a result, so Amrlai, so Nebuchadnezzar says to Tzidkiyahu, Ishtabali Delo Megales Ilavai Velo Tepok Milsa. Swear to me that you're not going to tell anybody what I did. Ishtaba. So of course, Tzidkiyahu swears. Lasof Hava Kametzdayar, but Tzidkiyahu Begufe. But in the end, the holding in of the secret was causing physical pain to Tzidkiyahu. It shall ashvu asay, and so he asked that he be allowed to no longer be subject to the oath, the Amar. And so, and that obviously happened. And then he told people about it. Well, Shama Nebuchadnezzar to come of Vazenle. So Nebuchadnezzar, of course, hears that people are making fun of him because they knew what he had done. So Shalavaiti Sanhedrin Tzidkiyahu. So he goes and he sends messengers for the Sanhedrin and Tzidkiyahu to come to him. Amr Lahon, and he says to them, Chazeson mai ka'avid Tzidkiyahu. So he says to the Sanhedrin, did you see what Tzidkiyahu did? Meaning he's lav hachi ishtaba bishma deshemaya delo megalnena. He swore that he wouldn't tell anybody. He swore to Hashem that he wouldn't tell anybody. So Amri lay. So they said ishtalei ashvuasa. He asked and about releasing his vow, and that is exactly what happened. So Amr lahu. Mitashlin ashvuasa. Can you actually reveal, undo an oath? So ain amri lay ain. Yes, you absolutely can. Amr lahu b'fanav o afila shelo b'fanav. Well, 1 second. When it's for the benefit of somebody, is that allowed to be done even when the person's not present, or does the person have to be present? Amri lay b'fanav. No, it's got to be in the person presence. Well, Amr lahon. So he tells them, what did you do? You didn't do it in my presence. I didn't know about this. I wasn't told. So Taima lo amrisun l'tzidkiyahu. You shouldn't my Taima lo amrisun l'tzidkiyahu. Why didn't you tell Tzidkiyahu that he couldn't undo the vow without me being there? So miyad yeshu la'aretz yidmu ziknei vaszion. And so this is this story that we just told is the background that helps us understand how in Eicha, Megillas Eicha, it says that sit on the ground and be silent, elders of the daughter of Zion. So the point is that these elders of the daughters of Zion, that's referring to the rabbis, and the rabbis were told to sit on the ground. They lost their power to judge. They were no longer being treated like judges, and because they had judged improperly. And indeed, this is the start of the fall of Yerushalayim, and Nebuchadnezzar ends up destroying Yerushalayim. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Shashamtu Karim Metachteihem, and Rabbi Yitzchak explains they took the cushions out of from underneath the members of the Sanhedrin, forcing them to sit on the ground. They didn't have chairs any longer, and so that is the story. And now we can understand, how when the Ran spoke about earlier, this story, you can see that here we have a situation where it seems that the oath was made for the benefit of Nebuchadnezzar, and the oath was nullified by the Chachamim, even though Nebuchadnezzar wasn't present. So that certainly seems to be a strong proof of the fact that that you're not allowed to, that even that b'diavad, if one did annul a vow, then it would be annulled, even if the person was not told or informed or given permission to, given a chance to deny permission to the person who made the oath in the first place. Okay, so now we get to the next Mishnah, and the next Mishnah is going to continue the discussion of new developments and whether they can serve as the basis to annul a vow. So Rabbi Meir Omer, Yesh Dvarim Shehein Kinolad ve'enan Kinolad. There are some things that are like new developments and not like new developments. But ve'ein Chachamim Modim Lo. But the Chachamim did not agree with him. So Ketzad, what are we talking about? So Amar, if somebody were to say, Konam Shani Noseyas Plonis Sha'aviha Ra, I'm not going to marry this woman because her father is wicked. Amrulo Mes O Sha'asa Tshuva, and then they're he's told that the guy had died or did tshuva. So, or konam levayzeh shani nichnas, or I'm not going to enter this house. Shakelev ra besocho o shanachash besocho, because there's a bad dog or a snake inside it. And so as a result, he doesn't want to go in. So Amrulo, Mesa Kelev on Raga Nachash. And if it turns out that the dog died or the snake was killed, Hare Hain Kanola Ve'in Nolad. These are like Nolad because again, it's a new development, but they're not considered like fully like a new development. But the Chachamim do not agree. And so, what does this all mean? So let's take a look, and we'll get the more details, because on some level, the ultimate case of nolad is a situation of death. So let's see as the Gemara picks up on that particular point. So konam sha'ani, etc. So the Gemara cites the language of the Mishnah. Meis noladhu. I don't understand. If what you're saying is that the person died, and now we're going to annul the vow because the person died, that is the fundamental case of a nolad. And so as a result, shouldn't that be taken into account and be dealt with? Shouldn't that be a new development such that that's the debate between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim? Why is Rabbi Meir saying that that's not like a new development? It's the prototypical new development. So Rav Huna Nasa Kisola Kitola Nidro Bedavar. No, by referencing the story, by giving us the additional information, by saying that the reason that I'm saying not to go into this house is because of the wicked dog or the snake, or the fact that I say that I'm not going to go in, marry this woman because her father is wicked. So all of those things are situations where it's almost as if I made it conditional. And let's take a look at the Ran, and we can use here the opportunity to do the Ran on the Mishnah as well. So yesh dvarim shehem benolad kinolad ve'enin kinolad. So there are some things that are like nolad and some things that are not. And in the same item has similarities to nolad and has differences. Lefisha who kitola nidro. So since it's as if you conditioned your neder bedavar on this thing, the kaven de amar shavia ra, because you said that the woman's father is evil. Mashma kolzman shavia ra. The implication is that your neder is only as long as the man is in fact wicked. Filafikach kishamei. And therefore, if and when the person dies, you do or does tshuva, so then the oath will fall away because the condition is no longer valid. And now we take a look in the first Ran on the Gemara at fourth line up, middle of the line of the widest lines on Samach Hey Amud Aleph. Nasa Ketola Nedro Bedavar K'depereshit, as I just explained. Shari, and that's why, as a result, the neder is as if it wasn't a neder at all, and is permitted. Afila below sheilas chacham, even without asking a wise person or a beit din. V'hachi isab Yerushalmi, and this is what we see in Yerushalmi. The Amrin and Hasam, because we say over there, Memneshahu kitola nidro bedavar, that it's as if the person introduced a condition in his oath. But Omer Konam Shani Nana Liish Ploni Kozman Shehu Lovesh Chorim, that if I say that I'm not going to benefit from this particular person as long as he wears black, Lavash Levanim, Mutter, if he starts wearing white, then you can. Rabbi Zera B'Shem, Rabbi Yochanan, Avhu Eno Tzarach Sheilul Chacham. And Rabbi Zera says that you don't even need to ask a question to undo the vow. And so that is the Ran explaining this situation. So now we have a better understanding of the view of Rav Huna. But that is not the only view. Rabbi Yochanan offers a second answer. And so let's take a look at that answer. So what does he say? He says, Kvar mes uchvar asa tshuva ka'amrile. No, you're misunderstanding our Mishnah, that when we say that the person has died or done tshuva, we're talking about that he actually died or did tshuva before the person made the vow. And so as a result, it was undone from the beginning. All right, well, 1 second. So Mesiv Rabbi Abba. So Rabbi Abba is going to use now a Mishnah that we have not yet seen, but we'll see in a couple days, and say this doesn't, maybe God willing tomorrow, that this doesn't make any sense, that in fact this is going to be a problem, because Konam, what does that Mishnah say that we'll learn God willing tomorrow? Konam Sha'ani Nosa Leplonis Ku'ura. That I'm not, if somebody says that they're not going to marry this ugly woman because she's ugly, but then it turns out that she's beautiful, shechora, that he's not going to marry her because she's dark, and it turns out she's light, kitsara, or she's short, aruka, and in fact she's tall, mutarba, he is allowed to marry her. It's not because she was ugly and she became beautiful. She was dark and she became white. She was short and she became tall. But rather it's because the underlying vow was not a valid vow, because it was a mistake. And so as a result, it never took effect. So Bishlam ala Rav Huna. Now, when it comes to Rav Huna, Nasa Kutola Nidra B'davar, if we say that when our Mishnah is talking about making a condition of the item, and so as a result, when he says that he's not marrying this woman because her father is evil, so it's as if he made the evilness a necessary condition for the oath to take effect. Well, then that is a different category, a different situation from the situation of saying that the woman is ugly. But Tana Tola Nidro B'davar, right? But according to Rav Huna, who says that actually, let's say that the Tana Neder Tos, but if he's according to, I'm sorry, so Tana Tola Nidro B'davar, right? So the first Mishnah is teaching us about when it's dependent on something, and Vitana Neder Tos, and then we're talking about a situation where the person just simply made a mistake. But Ella Rabbi Yochanan. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar Kfar Mesu Kfar Asa Tshuva, where the situation is where the father had already done tshuva or had already died. Well, Lama Lila Misne Trey Zimne Neder Tos. That's a Neder Tos, just as what we're going to see tomorrow is a Neder Tos. So why bother to repeat it? So Kasha, in fact, it's difficult. And so as a result of this difficulty, our Mishnah is generally understood from a halakhic perspective as dealing with a condition that is effectively read into the Mishnah, read into the vow, and read into the neder. So like Rav Huna says. So okay, so now we're ready to continue, and where the next Mishnah says, addresses openings based on how the vow results in the violation of a mitzvah. So the Odar Rabbi Meir offered another basis to nullify a vow. Poskalo min hakasav Shabbat. We are allowed to use psukim in the Torah to nullify vows, to find openings. For Omer Lo, and we'll tell a person, Ilu hayita yodeya sha'ata over al lotikom. If you would have known that you were going to violate the commandment of lotikom, then you're not going to take revenge. Va'al lotitar, or you're not going to bear a grudge. Va'al lotisna esachika bilvavecha, and you're not going to hate your brother in your heart. And you're going to love him as yourself. And that your brother is going to live with you. Shehu ani ve'enata yachol lefarnaso, and because after all, that person is who you need to live with you is poor and doesn't have the ability to support himself. And so, as we see, we take a look at the Mefarish 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. Shema Yeani machmas nedarcha, that because of your neder, it'll turn out that you're not able to support the person who you need to support. So Amar, and so if in that situation, ilu hayita yadeya shehu kain lo hayita noder, and if the person then in that circumstance, after you tell the person that, listen, you're violating taking revenge, or you're violating bearing a grudge, or you're violating hating your brother in your heart, or you're violating not loving your fellow as yourself, or you're violating your brother shall live with you, in all those situations, that if the person says, yeah, if I had known that, I would not have made the vow, so harei ze mutter, so then the vow can be annulled. And the Ran explains, if we take a look at the Ran on the Mishnah, about 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11 lines down in the narrow lines of the Ran, on the right-hand side of the page on Samach Hey Amabet. Now you may remember back all the way back in Kaf Bet Amud Aleph that we said that Delo Patchinan B'Yesh Bota Kedemik Charev, that the Kaddish Shmuel, that when it comes to saying that there's a possibility that making an oath is going to be like, somebody who makes an oath is deserving of being pierced with a sword. And as Shmuel had said, Amar Kol Hanoder Afal Gav Shemakaimon Nikra Russia, that everybody is that if the person makes an oath, they are they're considered a Russia. Because the Rebbe Nassan the Amar Kol Hanoder Ki'ilu Bana Bama, and that Rebbe Nassan says that if you make a neder, it's as if you built a strange altar outside the Beit HaMikdash, which is prohibited. So the Hassam Shiny, that's different. The reason that you can't use those as an opening, those are big things. Those are big problems. The filu al das hano neder yispayesh lomar kain, right? And if the person is going to it would really have made the neder anyway, they're going to be embarrassed to say that. So nimza she'ein nidarav nitrin yafe, and as a result, they won't be able to nullify his vows in a valid manner because he may be lying. Aval honey, but these items, the money tana hacha that we're learning about here, lo chamirei in shekulei. People are not so worried about those kinds of things, and so as a result, that's why you're allowed to use a single mitzvah as a basis, but to use sort of a broad brush attack on all nedarim, that can't be used as a method to find an opening to nullify a vow. So now our Gemara picks up on this, and the Gemara questions the Mishnah's usage of poverty as a basis to say that the vow should be annulled. So Amar le Rav Huna bar Rav Katina l'Rabba. So Rav Huna bar Rav Katina asked Rabba, "Nema kol dema'ane lav alai nafil." Why can't the guy say that I'm not supposed to I don't have an obligation to support this person on my own, right? My demate lefarnaso, the fact that I need to feed, to support him, bahadi kule alma mefarnasana lay, I can support him with the rest of the community. Meaning, I said that I wasn't going to benefit him in particular, but I don't need to benefit him in particular. I can just give money to the kupat tzedakah, to the general fund of tzedakah, and as a result, that way I will be able to support not only this person, but any person who becomes in need of communal funds. And that way I will not have violated my neder. Okay, so Amar Le, so Rabbah responds back to Rav Huna, Ani Amar Omer Kol Hanofel Eno Nofel Lidei Gabai Tchila. The issue is that when somebody falls to the responsibility of the Gabai Tefillah, so then it does not, they do not, somebody who falls to the Gabai Tzedakah, that who needs to get tzedakah, they don't go immediately to that situation. Rather, they first need to go to their families and take a look at the Ron, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up from the narrow line, bottom of the narrow lines on Samachay Amud Bet. Kol novel ain't novel day gabay tchila. Ela show mikrova. First, he has to ask his relatives. Umikparnes and receive some income from them. And during that time, and at that moment, if there is no support for the person, then you, this person's relative, are going to be violating the commandment of that your brother should be able to live with you. Okay, so now that we've dealt with that situation in the Gemara, so now the next Mishnah addresses the ability to use as an opening to annul a neder the husband's obligation to pay his wife's ksuba. And with that, we'll finish for today. So, a person is allowed to use the ksuba of his wife in order to, or the rabbis are allowed to use the ksuba of a man's wife in order to find a justification for him to nullify his vow in certain circumstances. And now we're going to give the circumstances. For example, there was a person who made a neder that he was not going to benefit from his wife. And so as a result, he needed to divorce her because remember, although he is allowed to make that neder is chal because it was not in the other direction. If he were to say that his wife is not allowed to benefit from him, that he can't do because he has an obligation to allow her to benefit from him. But he has no obligation to receive the benefit from her. But at the same time, there's no way in connection with marital relations that he will not benefit when he is helping her benefit from the marital relations. So as a result, he will need to divorce her if he does not undo this vow. And so what happened? So now, v'haisa ksubasa arba meos dinarim, and the amount of her ksuba, this woman's ksuba, was 400 dinar. Uba lifnei Rabbi Akiva, and now it all came to Rabbi Akiva. V'chivo litain la ksubasa, and so as a result, he said she needs to get her 400 dinar ksuba. Amrlo, the guy who made the neder told Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi, shmona meos dinarin hiniachaba. My father left me 800 dinar. Nato achi arba meod. My brother took half of it, so that's 400. Bani arba meod, and I'm supposed to get half of it. Lo dayash told he matayim ba'ani matayim. Why not let I'll take 200, she'll get 200, and everybody will be happy. So Amr Lo, Rabbi Akiva said to him, what are you talking about? Afilu ata mocher sa'ar roshcha ata noten la. In order for you to give her ksuba, you may even need to sell the hair on your head. So Amar Lo, the fellow said back to Rabbi Akiva, Ilu hayiti yodea shukain. If I had known that was going to be my obligation, lo hayiti no there, I wouldn't have made this vow. The Tira Rabbi Akiva, and so as a result, Rabbi Akiva was able to annul the vow so that the man could, in fact, pay his wife the ksuba that in fact because the ksuba would be obligated, the man regretted making his neder, and so as a result, the neder was allowed to be annulled, and so they were allowed to stay married. But if in fact he were going to have to divorce her, so then he would have to pay her the full 400 dinar that in fact he had promised. All right, so as a result, we see that you can use the threat, essentially, of having to pay off the ksuba as a way to potentially find an opening for the elimination of a valid neder. So, okay, and now tomorrow, God willing, so that today we say that, in fact, actually, so now tomorrow we'll discuss the nature of this obligation to pay the ksuba. Now we've seen previously in Maseches Ksubos that a person's property that even today, we say that all of a person's property, including movable property, is considered pledged for the ksuba. But at the time of the Gemara, there was a debate about this issue, and the Chachamim said that only real property was pledged. So now the problem is that Rabbi Akiva's statement was saying that even the hair on his head might have to be sold. That seems to suggest that even movable property is pledged. And we did not know that Rabbi Akiva was going to disagree with the Chachamim. And so the question that we'll have tomorrow, when we pick up tomorrow, we will consider whether, in fact, Rabbi Akiva actually disagrees with the Chachamim on this issue. So, all right, so we'll leave things off at that point, and God willing, we'll pick up with the Gemara at the bottom of Samach Hey Amabet, God willing, tomorrow. So I look forward to seeing you then, as we'll do, God willing, day 3 from the Schwartz vacation. Be well. Have a wonderful day.